All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something that is absolutely essential for so many of us: how to really work with an interpreter. And let me tell you, this is way more than just a scheduling issue. It's a skill that can completely transform how we communicate and make sure everyone gets the equitable access they deserve.
This quote right here, it just hits the nail on the head. It's telling us that working with interpreters isn't some nice-to-have add-on. Nope. It's a core professional skill. It's just as fundamental as any other tool in your toolkit, because without it, you're not just risking a simple miscommunication, you could be denying someone the very services they have a right to.
So that's the big question, isn't it? We get the why. It's important. We have to do it. But what about the how? What does being effective actually look like when you're in the room? How do you go from just having an interpreter present to building a real communication partnership? Well, that's exactly what we're going to unpack today. Okay, first things first, let's be really clear about the stakes here. This is about so much more than just swapping words from one language to another. Getting this wrong, well, it can have some pretty serious consequences. We're talking about everything from legal trouble to a total breakdown of trust with the people you're trying to help. I want to be crystal clear on this point because it's a huge deal. Using a family member, a friend, and especially a child to interpret, it's not a solution. It's not a shortcut. It's a massive liability. You're putting them in an impossible position, and you're compromising confidentiality and accuracy. This isn't just a friendly suggestion. Think of it as a hard and fast rule for ethical practice. So this means we've got to shift how we view the interpreter. They are not a walking, talking dictionary. They are your communication bridge. Think about that. They're a conduit, making sure the message flows accurately. They're a clarifier, helping navigate tricky concepts. And, so importantly, they're a cultural broker who can help you understand the nuances that you might otherwise totally miss. All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to walk through this with a super clear roadmap. We'll hit the 3 main phases of any interpreted session: the briefing before, the interaction during, and the debrief after. Then we'll tackle some common roadblocks before we tie it all together. Okay, let's dive into what is easily the most overlooked and, you could argue, the most important part of this whole process: the pre-session briefing. Success doesn't just happen when the client arrives. It's built in the preparation. What you do in those few minutes before the session kicks off can literally make or break the whole thing. So how seriously should you take this prep time? Well, the experts all agree you need to set aside a dedicated 10 to 15 minutes every single time. This isn't something you can just wing in the hallway for 30 seconds. You got to treat it like a non-negotiable part of the appointment itself. So what do you actually do in those 15 minutes? Well, it's your huddle. You explain who you are and what you're hoping to achieve. You go over any key terms or jargon you might use. You share just enough background on the client, and you remind everyone about confidentiality. And here's a key one. You ask the interpreter for their cultural insights. And finally, you give them a heads up on any forms or assessments you'll be using. No surprises. That's how you turn an interpreter into a true partner. Okay, all that prep work means you're now set up for a much smoother live interaction. Once that session starts, your behavior in the room has a direct impact on the flow of everything. If you only take away one single thing from this entire explainer, please let it be this: speak directly to the client or the family, not to the interpreter. Don't turn to the interpreter and say, "Can you ask them how they're doing?" No. Look at the person you're serving, make eye contact, and speak to them. The interpreter is a professional. They know to facilitate that conversation. This one small shift changes everything. It shows respect and it builds trust. It's a game changer. Beyond that one huge rule, there are a few other habits that make a world of difference. Always introduce everyone at the start. Speak in short of sentences, then pause. Give the interpreter time to work. Please avoid side conversations. The interpreter is supposed to translate everything, so it gets really confusing. Keep your clinical eye open for nonverbal cues. And remember, if you need a language sample, you need to ask for a word-for-word translation, not just the gist of it. So the client has left the room. You might feel like you're done, but wait, there's one more crucial phase: the post-session debrief. This is your chance to make sure nothing important got lost in the shuffle.
Think of the debrief as your quality control. It's a quick chat with the interpreter to compare notes. You can ask, did anything feel off to you? Any cultural things I might have missed? This is also when you get the full translation of any language samples you recorded. And maybe most importantly, it's a chance to ask, hey, what could we do even better next time? This is how we all improve. And of course, we have to talk about documentation. It's got to be precise. It's not good enough to just jot down used interpreter. You need their full name, you need the specific language, and even the dialect. And this last one is a biggie. For your records to be accurate, you must include the client's original words, the language sample itself, right alongside the translation. That original data is gold.
Okay, so we've mapped out the ideal process, but we all know that real life is messy. So let's talk about one of the most common and toughest challenges you're likely to face. Yup, this one is tricky. The family comes in and says, nope, we're good, no interpreter needed. But you have a strong feeling they really do need one. How on earth do you handle that without making things awkward or damaging the relationship right from the start? So here are a few ways to approach this with empathy. First, try to figure out why they're refusing. A lot of the time, it's about privacy. They're worried about word getting out in their community. So you can start by reassuring them about the strict confidentiality rules. You can also frame it as, the interpreter is also for me to make sure I don't miss anything important. And if they want to use a friend, you can gently explain why a trained professional is needed, but maybe offer a compromise. Allow both your interpreter and their friend to be in the room. All right, as we wrap things up here, let's circle all the way back to that core idea. The goal is to stop seeing interpreters as just a service you call in and start treating them as true communication partners. And when you get this right, the benefits are just huge. You're actively protecting people's rights. You're making sure consent is truly informed. You're building that cultural bridge that makes families feel seen and respected. You're empowering them to be partners in their own care. And at the end of the day, you're making sure everyone is on the same page, which leads to much, much better outcomes. So I'm going to leave you with this one final thought. Every single time we interact with someone where language might be an issue, we're making a choice. With how we prepare, how we act, and how we follow up, are we consciously and carefully building a strong bridge for clear communication? Or even if we don't mean to, are we accidentally putting up another barrier? The choice and the skill to build that bridge is entirely ours.